Welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be reviewing a tier list I made for Sonic.exe The Disaster 1.3, the current version that I'm currently playing on at the time of this recording. You may have some questions on why the tier list is like this. Well, I'm going to try to convince you on why I believe that this is the most objective tier list. And yeah, let's get right into the video. Starting off the bottom of the tier list, we have Rouge. Rouge isn't good at doing anything at all. Her sensors are decent until you realize most of the maps are so open that you can see the EXE from across the map. Remote Bomb seems good on paper, but then you realize you have to pray to God that the EXE somehow runs over the bomb, and that isn't easy when your own teammates fail to realize where the bomb you placed is. Flashbang and Slide are the only semi-decent things about Rouge, but then you realize Slide isn't frame 1 invul, so you have situations like this happen. Flashbang is situational because it's a 50-50 on whether or not the EXE hears your footsteps and hits you anyways. They should just make Flashbang stun instead of slowing and blinding, because Rouge needs something to compete in today's game, because right now, she's trash. I'll still play her though, because she's kinda bad, bruh. Next at the bottom, we have Cream. Cream isn't that good at supporting the team, even though that's her entire design. Sure, Overheal can be clutch, but most EXEs can play around it really well. Her speed boost isn't that good either, since it can't get her out of a chase, leaving you to rely on her juking skills, which most Cream players don't have, or to pass by a player with a stun. Cream is really team dependent, and most of the time you don't have a good enough team to play the character, so you'd rather just have another stunner on your team. Eggman. Once a great all-arounder to have on your team, downgraded to public nuisance and a free kill. Reworking Eggman has been a disaster for the character. Jetpack going nowhere unless you charge it is a terrible game design choice, since most of the time you don't get time to charge it if you're in a chase. And instead of having shock, you get turrets. Turrets are situational at best, since they can be taken down in one hit, and the slowdown isn't enough to outspeed or outmaneuver an EXE. And the pea shooter of a weapon Eggman now has is just range EMP, which again slows instead of stuns, so even if you do hit it, chances are EXE is going to get a hit regardless. And good luck if you start getting chased as Eggman, because you basically have zero tools to stun or slow the EXE if you ever get in a chase. Start praying you have clutch teammates, because if you don't, you're going to be essentially hearing We begin C tier with Tails. Tails is really player dependent because on one hand you can have a god of a Tails player hitting all their shots, or disaster class of a Tails player missing all their shots. Most of the time it's the latter, since this game's player base is mostly mobile or controller users. Even if you do hit his shots, he's still free if the EXE decides to chase you, and Arm Cannon or Glide isn't going to get you far. Tails is definition of a situational character, but he's extremely niche in those situations. Sally. Also once a former must-have on your team, now just a character that suffered a bad case of being power crept. Sally used to be able to do everything with one ability, and that's EMP. With that ability now gone, Sally is more of a semi-reliable support than the monster she was in 1.1. Sally's new fire and water shields are able to get you out of a bad position, however the EXEs have ways to counter the movement of the fire shield and water shield. Sally isn't terrible, however she is dependent on the team she plays with, making her struggle a bit. Starting up B tier with the only character in B tier, Knuckles. Knuckles is in a weird spot because on one hand he has the lowest cooldown 3-second stun in the game and is frame 1 invul. On the other hand, if you're playing against a competent EXE, you're realistically never landing it while being chased. Block is also a good move if you have decent reaction times, but again, most of the time it's getting baited. Knuckles is able to devastate the EXE if the EXE doesn't know how to play around him, but on the other hand, he practically becomes useless if the EXE knows how to play against Knuckles. He also can't help the team efficiency since block and punch have an incredibly short reach, and even if you do somehow get between the EXE and the survivor, EXE can bait it out. Rework Knuckles, please. This character has been the same since launch and has never peaked yet. A for Amy as she begins A tier off. Amy is just a better character than Knuckles in every situation, with Hammer having longer range than Punch, while also being frame 1 invul, makes her insanely strong. Hammer Spin also being a frame 1 stun is also good for multiple situations such as forcing EXE off chase. It is, however, easily baited and easily punished by competent EXEs. Hammer Throw is also good for stun chains, and non-Hammer Amy gives you a movement option, which allows you to easily get your hammer back in certain situations. Amy has a much better and easier time hitting her stuns, while also being able to force EXE off chase, contributing to stun chains, or if you're really brave, you can try and juke with Amy. Blaze is an interesting character, as she only has 2 moves, but one of them does 3 things at once. Fire Tornado is a contender for one of the best abilities in the game for how much it can do. It can cut EXEs off, set up stun chains, is a reliable movement option, and you can push EXEs off ledges. Heat Wave is also a really good move to force EXEs off chases, and is even fast enough to be usable in juking situations. Blaze doesn't have that high of a skill ceiling either, so even mobile players can do semi-reliable things with her, since Fire Tornado carries hard. All in all, Blaze is a must-have on your team at every skill level. Now we get to S tier. Best of the best, the must-haves on your team. But I suppose you're wondering why Silver is up there with the kings of the game. I know what you're thinking. Every Silver player is trash and his abilities are mid. But that's because 99% of players can't hit Orb or use Berry in chase scenarios. Silver is S tier because of Orb and Speed Boost alone. Orb you can throw frame 1 and it has a cooldown at 18 seconds. But it isn't hit scan, which means it's not point and click. Normally, it sounds like a worse version of Tails' arm cannon, but it can be used in many different situations, most notably when being chased by an EXE. Orb can be also used as a range option, and unlike Tails' cannon, it doesn't take 10 years to start up. Speed Boost is a great ability because while it does speed you up, it's even better on allies, which means you can help your teammates while staying on the sidelines while they can juke more consistently. And you could even hit Orb to make distance. And Barrier. Yeah, it's just there. It really has no other use other than to block off the EXE, who thinks you're going to throw an Orb, or block off a really tight spot, which the EXE can't jump over. All in all, Silver is a great all-arounder, with solid tools to punish the EXE. Too bad most of his player base skews his results, and can't use Barrier or even Orb effectively. All hail Shadow, as he's still one of the best characters in the history of TD. Seriously, Shadow hasn't dropped from top 3 since 1.0. Shadow's movement options and stuns are way too overtuned, and that means he can use his abilities as freely as he wants without him really wasting them. In a chase, boost or homing attack. Break a chase, boost or homing attack. Help a teammate, boost or homing attack. Want to gain distance, boost or homing attack. Want to help in a stun chain, boost or homing attack. The situations where you can utilize these 2 abilities are practically endless. Anyone can pick up Shadow and do moderately well with him, and if you run into a player who can juke, just expect that Shadow to have over 100 DT. Shadow is a great pick to have on your team no matter what EXE it is, since both of his moves can do everything, including your taxes.
Metal Sonic. Where do I begin? This fake metal hedgehog is the best character in the game by far, and has been since his release all the way back in the test place days. Push being nerfed so you can jump hardly matters since you can still do the tech, albeit it takes a bit more skill. Grapple is super broken right now. Getting hit on a grapple means the EXE is getting tossed around the map and off the platform most of the time. A good metal is the EXE's worst nightmare thanks to his increased health, which can allow him to get more pushes and grapples off due to taking hits, reducing cooldowns. Metal can force EXEs off chases extremely well, and God forbid there's a cream on the team, spamming heal on a Metal, which makes him a one-man army. If you're going against Metal, pray to God they are a mobile user, because if they aren't, you're most likely getting juked for 200 seconds.